Howdy. No. Phew. Howdy. You know how a few weeks ago I dove into the Japanese lines of Don't Forget, and we briefly got sidetracked by the apparent switch in narrators right here? Since then, people have been pointing out that the chapter select for Chapter 1 also sounds like Gaster. But, like the Goner segment, it seems to suddenly shift narrators the moment you beat Chapter 1. It's also been pointed out that Gaster uses the you pronoun, kimi, at the end of entry 17, implying either that he's close to the people he's talking to, or has a certain confidence as the head scientist addressing his subordinates. But all this musing over pronouns and linguistic works has got me curious. What about the Memoryheads? Before we get started, spoilers for Undertale and Deltarune. Don't hassle people for using text-to-speech, and be nice to your fellow theorists when you disagree in the comments. It's so odd to me that I don't see this coming up as a point of discussion, as the Memoryheads currently stand as the only Amalgamates in Undertale whose origin we cannot point to. All the other Memoryheads have acts that correspond to other monsters, and when we get to the overworld, we can find each of them reuniting with their families, except the Memoryheads and Reaperbird, Reaperbird is the everyman amalgamate, so it's sus as heck too. The official art book actually contains breakdowns of each of the amalgamates and which monsters were used to make them, including the Reaperbird, which Toby claims to have created first. And it appears it initially inspired a more Grim Reaper-themed Whimsalot, hence the name, Reaperbird. The butterflies seen in this attack are actually deeply tied to symbolism of death and rebirth in Japanese culture, which explains the early designs of Whimsum, and seems to be creeping into some of the design choices in Deltarune already. But that theory's already been covered by VGFM, so I won't rehash that whole thing here. Anyway, my point is, Toby has provided us with the components of each amalgamate, except for the Memoryheads. And now in Deltarune, we have the same sort of issue. There's a graveyard here with tombstones for Shira, Mutler, and Crystal, each of which corresponds with an amalgamate encounter, but the Memoryheads and Reaperbird remain mysteriously absent. Why? Is it because their monsters are still alive? Back in the days of Undertale, there was a lot of speculation that the Memoryheads might be pieces of Gaster, as their bullets vaguely resemble the Mystery Man sprite. Their battle sprites somewhat resemble Gaster blasters, their name has 6 spaces, and their acts reference the cell phone, which is a component to half of the fun events. But now that we have Deltarune, the cell phone is even more strongly tied to Gaster, as not only can you hear entry 17 through the receiver, but it's also strongly implied that Gaster was the one helping Spamton through the phone. So what exactly are the Memoryheads? Are they pieces of Gaster melted together? Some last trace of his magic? Or are they similar to the Goner vessels? Discarded husks of the beings we created and then cast into the darkness, screaming into the receiver, unable to accept that they are all alone. Well, if we really want to solve this mystery, we're going to have to analyze their dialogue, right? So let's put an ear to the receiver and take a listen. Now I know what you're thinking. If the dog amalgamates just wanted to play, then maybe we should accept their agreement and join their little party. But I regret to inform you that if you choose accept, they ask you to stand still, which I would not recommend doing. But what if we fight them in Japanese? Can we learn anything else about them via their pronouns? Well, let's see. Wait. Kimi. Aw crap. Move aside, Ral say. We have a new candidate for with us in the dark. So let's see here.
When the light is running low, and the shadows are to grow, and the places that you know seem like fantasy, there's a light inside your soul that's still shining in the cold with the truth, the promise in our hearts. Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark.
I'm disturbed that this is plausible. I think the biggest point against it is probably the truth, the promise in our hearts. But hear me out. If these things are tied to Gaster somehow, and Gaster is some kind of unholy or demonic force, which, between the 666 motifs and corrupting nature, is possible, then there is a chance Kris has had contact with Gaster before, as a lot of the flavor text strongly implies that Kris has been trying to learn how to do magic, including looking into demon summoning rituals. The Chaos King also calls Kris Lightbringer, which is a synonym for Lucifer, aka the devil. So whether these things are manifestations of Gaster himself, or the only thing that remains of the lost souls that have had the misfortune of dealing with him, the connection here is absolutely plausible. But the strongest connection has got to be the name of the song itself, Don't Forget. As applied to the Memoryheads, this is neither a comforting reassurance, nor a menacing threat, but an unbreakable command because of the item they give you, the bad memories. This item cannot be dropped, ever. If you try, they come right back. You can sell them of course, but that's not forgetting a memory, that's sharing it. Just as the family members of the Amalgamates keep coming back to haunt Alfies with letters and phone calls, the bad memories keep coming back, as if to say, don't forget, we're with you in the dark. What I want to know is, why this item only damages you if your health is greater than 3. It sells for 300 in the temp shop too. What an oddly random number to choose, when the numbers 4 and 9 have so much symbolic meaning for death and torture. I suppose this does tie it back to the wrong number song, which also occurs using a phone, and can trigger on any fun value between 2 and 40. But other than that, there's not a lot of instances of the game using 3s, or as we'd say in Japanese, son. Wait. Son? Sons? Whom? I can't tell if that's a coincidence or intentional. But regardless, this still leaves us with one major question. What do they use for an I pronoun? At first I thought this would be easy, since in English they use the word us quite a bit. I figured I'd just need to load it up in Japanese and wait till we get to this line. But then I ran into a bit of a problem. The thing is, Japanese doesn't actually require, or expect, you to use I pronouns in a lot of these cases. If you say something like, delicious, it's just assumed that you mean, I think it's delicious. So when they say become one of us, it actually translates out to, kimi mo oideo, with kimi being you, and oideo, being a verb that means come together. That they want you to come together with them, is just assumed. But surely they must use I in Japanese at least once, right? So I fought them, dear viewers, screen capping their dialogue, writing it down, carefully translating it, and then I realized I had no way to know if I was seeing all of their dialogue. To really know for sure, I'd have to look into the code. Unfortunately, when you search for an enemy like Memoryhead in the code, it doesn't pull up their Japanese dialogue, because all the dialogue in this game is just stored in a handful of massive text dumps, and the Japanese is stored elsewhere. So probably the best place to start is to just do a search for one of their lines, and I forgot that won't work because the code has all these little random symbols mixed in with the strings. In that case, let's try searching for just 1 or 2 of the more obscure words, and then we can process of elimination it down to the Memoryheads. Yep, that works. First, I tried just pulling up a list of all the Japanese pronouns, and scanning for those directly, but yet, there's no way I'm going to successfully memorize that? So okay then, plan B. Instead, I took each sentence and carefully ran it through a few translators, starting with Google Translate and then comparing the results against what little I already know about the language. And you know, my pocket dictionary, which I then followed up with our resident Japanese expert Claire Puppy Love for good measure. And after all that, we found nothing. But what about if we attack them? I know it's a stretch, since this script runs for all the Amalgamates. But in English this line does contain the phrase, I'm lovin' it, which is a quote from McDonald's. So did they translate it to the McDonald's slogan in Japanese? Did they translate it literally? Or did they just put like, daisuki, or something? Let's see. Special line 2? Line 2 in Japanese? Tamaran ai. So, unbearable. That's really weird. All the other lines here translate at least roughly to the same thing. Like don't worry about it becomes kini suruna, or don't worry. Line 2 is the only one I know of that's this different from the original. What is this? I don't even. Well, I guess for now the Amalgamates will have to keep their secrets, since, even in the code, there's no other examples of kimi. Except,
On your lips, what parts of your life? The cashmere down as if you cry. The pain itself is reason why.
Why is the you there translated as Kimi and not Jibun? All the other narration is Jibun. Who's saying that line to us? Wait. The pain itself is reason why. That's actually a reference to the Latin placeholder, lorem ipsum, or pain itself. Could this be a callback to the Memoryheads when they say, lorem ipsum docet, or pain itself teaches? Wait, why did Toby even translate these lines? Most the other unused text isn't translated, so did he specifically want to make sure this was accessible to Japanese data miners? Like, I get why he translated the unused files I mentioned in the Gonercode video, because those seem to be a deliberate and continuous piece of the story. But if these lines are connected to that, I can't prove it with the pronouns, because the unused never uses you, and the other lines never use I. So, for now, I guess I have no choice but to put this memory in the box for later. Out of sight, but never forgotten. But you know, I'm not very good with code or Japanese, so maybe you've caught something I missed? If so, let me know down in the comments. Because honestly, I am just one person, and you guys have been growing so quickly there's no feasible way I can keep up anymore. You all are catching secrets and solving riddles within hours, and it is so awesome, and so terrifying. So rather than try the impossible task of trying to outpace that, I'm just gonna try harder to keep up with the comments, so I can collect some of those epic insights, and pin them in the frequently asked questions at the top. So make sure to give that a look after the video. That said, YouTube makes it pretty hard to keep track of these, so if you can, dropping a thumbs up on some of those more important ones would help me out a lot. You peeps give me the best problems to solve, you know that? A special thanks to Gibby, who is the voice of the Memoryheads. You should totally check them out, they do great voice work, and a great many other things. Thank you as well to Claire Puppy Love for helping me double-check the Japanese dialogue. Thank you to my patrons for feeding me with your delicious cromer, and to all of you for your continued support. Finally, there's a certain wrong I need to set right. When I made this channel, I had 2 Pokemon videos. YouTube said they had nothing of value and refused to monetize me until I deleted them. They were wrong. So as my birthday present to myself, I'm going to take a brief pause from Undertale to redo my first 2 videos, which, while rough around the edges, were very precious and special to me. So I hope even though they aren't Undertale related, you'll consider joining me for that. And if you're one of the people telling me not to limit myself to Undertale and Deltarune, now's your chance to prove I can do that. Until then.